Is he handsome?
Yeah, he is handsome.
Really?
Being on the other side.
He's a poppy chulo.
The executive producer of Happening Out Television Network is an anchor tonight. How's he slumming with us?
How did we get so lucky?
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And I'm super excited. Cathy. Sorry?
Two completely different texts.
Yes, exactly. I'm excited. Cathy Renna from the National Taskforce, the National Communications Director, is with us tonight.
That woman is a powerhouse.
Yeah, this little thing called the Equality Act going on, you know? Well, welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news. It's 7 p.m. Wednesday, April 7th, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight. The world's first live daily queer evening news show. Out of the closet and into the headlines on Q News Tonight.
Thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only unedited, live LGBTQ evening news show. Whatever happens, you will see it.
This evening, we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson. First up, let's welcome anchor Faye. What? She's out, she's proud, and of course you know what I say the most. She's most certainly loud.
Woohoo!
She's a Latina to be reckoned with, half Puerto Rican, half Colombian, and 100% freaking Jersey. She's a radio personality and has the popular blog and YouTube channel aiming to unite the L and the G together. She's a hostess and MC for many South Florida events, a board member at Unity Coalition, and host of their new television show, UCTV. She is an animal advocate and owner of Faye's Fur Family, and is the anchor, this girl's busy, and the anchor of the new show, Happening Out Travel, the travel news show. Good evening, Faye.
Good evening, boys. And you know, I think I'm louder now that I'm fully vaccinated. I just want you to know.
Yeah, it's impossible. And next up is anchor Darren Lowley. And Darren is the executive producer at Happening Out Television Network, which is the reason why he gets nothing else in his title introduction tonight at Queer News Tonight.
I'm
All
happy
right.
to be here on the other side of the camera.
Yeah, all right. So tonight we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Wednesday, April 7. We begin by queering up entertainment. Watch the powerful trailer for Pose's third and final season. The countdown to the end of one of television's most iconic LGBTQ themes, the ballroom scene of the LGBTQ community, has begun. The first trailer for the third and final season of Pose has arrived. Set in 1994, 3 years after the events of season 2, the new season will focus on the characters as they reflect on their legacy in the ballroom scene, particularly, pray tell, Billy Porter, who is struggling with HIV-related health issues. The trailer confirms that Angel, India Moore, and Lil Poppy, Angel B. Curiel, are still going strong, while Blanca M.J. Rodriguez attempts to balance life as a house mother and nurse in the middle of the AIDS epidemic. We also see the return of other beloved characters such as Electra, Dominique Jackson, Lulu, Haley Sahar, and Ricky, Dylan Burnside, plus Judy, Sandra Bernhardt. Earlier this year, series creator Ryan Murphy confirmed that the critically acclaimed drama will end with its third season. Murphy said, quote, "Pose has been one of the creative highlights of my entire career. From the very beginning, when Stephen Canals and I sat down to hear his vision and ideas for the show, it has been a passion project. To go from the beginning of my career in the 1990s, when it was nearly impossible for an LGBTQ plus character on television, to Pose, which will go down in history for having the largest LGBTQ cast of all times, is a truly full circle moment for me, end quote. Although Pose's story comes to an end in 1996, Murphy said, quote, its impact will go on forever, end quote. Canals also expressed his love for the series and described it as a, quote, love letter to the underground New York ballroom community, end quote. Since its 2018 premiere, Pose has received widespread critical acclaim and nominations at the Golden Globes, Emmys, and Critics' Choice Awards. In 2019, Porter made history when he won the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series, becoming the first openly gay black man to be nominated and then win in a leading acting category. The third and final season of Pose will air May 2nd on FX. So we show the first trailer of the last season of our beloved House of Pose. Watch this.
I used to take that mic in my hands.
The category is...
And it made me feel alive. Your life matters.
This job is not for the faint of heart. You're a trans woman of color working in a hospital.
I'm just trying to stay afloat.
Is this about your legacy?
No, it's about our legacy.
5, 6, 7, 8.
We rose from the bottom, and we became stars. When we walk together, we make a statement.
I'm in.
We're just gonna be ourselves, and that's it.
The balls ain't what they used to be. Cash prizes and tacky lip syncs. There used to be the sense of urgency and community, and then folks just started dying.
Deep alone inside.
I knew this disease was gonna eat me alive, but I'm not going out without a fight.
We'll do it together as a family. I'm done running from myself, my destiny. I'm not running no more. Who's with me?
So let's just say that May 2nd, I'm going to be glued to the TV and I'm going to be crying, and they better not kill off Billy Porter in the season. I was hoping, like Orange is the New Black had too many seasons and then it got boring. I was hoping they'd do the same thing for Pose.
Yeah.
They're leaving me hanging. That's it. Just 3 seasons and it's over.
It's going to be over.
Not doing that. They're cutting it too soon.
Yeah.
See?
You know, a couple of notes. First off, one of the great things about what we're watching in this final season is what Ryan Murphy says. Very personal statement. To not being able to get an LGBTQ plus character openly on television in 1992, to being able to do a show that has the largest LGBTQ plus cast in history. That history will stay with this show and Ryan Murphy forever. And for me personally, I have to say, being constantly tagged with the privileged white guy kind of thing from you and others here in South Florida, Pose introduced me to the ballroom scene. My friend Power Infinity, when we started It's Happening Out, I went to my first house battle down here to the iconic House of Lords here in South Florida because of interest that was generated from Pose. So I will always thank them for that.
Next, we queer up South Florida. So join Cubaocho Festival for a safe and long-awaited happy hour this Thursday at Cubaocho. South Florida's Gay 8 Festival comes back this week, and that means signs of life for our entire LGBTQ community. A long-awaited in-person happy hour gathering happens this week to celebrate the festival's return, being held April 8th, that's tomorrow, from 7 to 10:30 p.m. It's called the Despojo Social. featuring DJ Zeno, who I love that girl. The drink and tapas menu will be held at the Cubaocho Museum and Performing Arts Center in Miami. The event has so much symbolism for the South Florida community as vaccines are speeding the LGBTQ community's ability to come out of pandemic and some forms of our new COVID-19 normalcy.
What do you think, Darren, about Gay 8 coming back and having a happy hour?
I'm super excited about it. I think that Faye's right. This is exactly what's going to start happening to the entire LGBTQ community in South Florida. We're ready to come out.
Yeah, we're ready to come out as the Supremes did in their famous song. My first thought is, I'm really glad you did this story. Been here in South Florida for 3 years, and I still couldn't do half of the words in the story that you just reported.
You could have called it Gay 8.
Yeah, right. I'm going to say the Gay 8 happy hour. It is exciting because it's a representation that there's a commitment that we can gather again together. We're all vaccinated, sitting here at the table. Mask, embrace the mask, but we are embracing the vaccine also, which means events like this can come back, and that's super exciting.
And so the girl part of Gay Ocho is called Lynn's Girl Central, right? And she was a really good friend of mine. Her name was Lynn Beauvais, and she died of cancer 2 years ago. So this is also like remembering her at this happy hour tomorrow. And, you know, we miss her. It's been 2 years, and this was her baby. And for Gay 8, they always have like a little alleyway that is jam-packed with women. We have the girl party there on that side. So we're also celebrating that tomorrow for this happy hour. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're taking all precautions. I'm saying we, like if I'm throwing the party. I'm just so excited to be out that I'm like, I'll be at the front taking temperatures, whatever it takes. Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
That's great.
Next we queer up sports. Louis Freese is Sports Illustrated first male swim search finalist. Queer News Tonight is doing a story about the iconic and masculine straight male Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition. Full stop. But let's just say that we're doing the story because of social activism, yeah? Louis Freese, the 21-year-old Minnesota native, just became the publication's first ever male finalist for their iconic swim search. He told People the magazine has been a forward-thinking voice on the issues of diversity and inclusivity, and that he fully intends to use the platform to continue the conversation while also serving as a visible inspiration to others. Freese said, quote, "Being that Sports Illustrated swimsuit has always led the conversation of inclusion and diversity, I thought, why not bring this discussion to the brand?" Quote, end quote. The irony of modeling what Freese called, quote, "one of the most binary forms of clothing," end quote, to tackle the issues of gender and identity was not lost on him. Freese is one of the 15 finalists, 6 of whom will appear on the issue. He is the only male. Freese said, quote, "I really hope it becomes more clear each year that Sports Illustrated swimsuit is truly a brand that cares about representation, caring so deeply about the issue that you can hear it in their voices and see it in their eyes," end quote. Everyone at Queer News Tonight cheers Sports Illustrated and their decisions for diversity and inclusivity, casting the first lesbian, Megan Rapinoe, first trans woman, Valentina Sampao, and first black trans woman, Lena Bloom. We think it's time to consider a non-binary gay person, wink, wink.
You know, it's funny. I have seen the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition a number of times, and I've never really been interested in it.
I wonder why.
I wonder why. So when I read this story, I thought it was super great. Let's ensure that we share this story to Sports Illustrated to say the gay community and the LGBTQ community is watching their decision-making very carefully. We applaud Sports Illustrated for the choices that they've made on lesbian, trans, and black trans and people of color. But it's now time to add somebody different to the swimsuit edition, and Freese is exactly that right choice.
And isn't he a cutie? I mean, he's adorable, and he's got that swimmer's body. I love Sports Illustrated for doing this, and like you said, they had the first trans, they also had the first lesbian. They even had a beautiful model that was like 65 years old also included. So they really do break all the rules, so to speak. So you know, I mean,
let's break the last one.
She's beautiful. Shut up, Al. Go do the next news story.
All right. Well, let's queer up the world. Ireland legally recognizes same-sex parents for the first time in history. 6 years after the passage of a law affirming the rights of same-sex mothers in Ireland. 2 women in the country have become the first to be legally recognized as the parents of their children from birth. Geraldine Renna and Naomi O'Sullivan welcomed their daughters, Raiden and Oban O'Sullivan-Ray. Both moms' names appear on the baby's birth certificates as parents. Ireland granted limited civil partnership rights in 2010, but did not address parenting until a constitutional amendment was approved in 2012. That amendment was delayed until 2015 due to legal challenges. Public support in Ireland for adoption by same-sex parents of any gender is around 70%, according to a survey in 2015 when the bill passed. The same year, an overwhelming 62% of Irish voters approved a historic referendum extending legal recognition to same-sex couples. The numbers in the predominantly Catholic country of Ireland have gone up another 10 points since 2015.
This story makes me super happy. I've got a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, that unfortunately years ago it was very difficult for a same-sex couple to adopt a child here in South Florida. So his birth certificate is only with one of their names. That was just something that you had to do back in the day. Now it's not that way anymore. So welcome Ireland, giving, there's so many children out there that need families.
Yeah.
Why not give us the right to adopt them?
Yeah, exactly.
It just makes complete sense.
Yeah, and we reported this week at Queer News Tonight, this is the anniversary week, the 20th anniversary week of marriage. The Netherlands was the first country in the world, the first week in April of 2001, to recognize same-sex marriage. 20-year anniversary, 30 countries followed the Netherlands. This is another example of a next big step in the evolution of LGBTQ rights worldwide.
So next we queer up trans rights. Arkansas legislature override governor's veto to ban gender-affirming care for trans youth. So just 24 hours ago, we reported live on Queer News Tonight that Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson vetoed the first and by far the worst anti-trans bill in history. Unfortunately, we report that since that report, the Arkansas General Assembly voted to override his veto and implement the proposal into law. Holly Dixon of the ACLU said, quote, "Today, Arkansas's legislature disregarded widespread, overwhelming, and bipartisan opposition to this bill and continued their discriminatory crusade against trans youth." End quote. As Governor Hutchinson noted in his veto message, denying care to trans youth can lead to harmful and life-threatening consequences. The so-called Arkansas Save Adolescents from Experimentation, SAFE, Act will ban gender-affirming care of any kind from being given or even offered for consideration to trans youth. That includes surgery, which trans youth rarely undergo before the age of 18, hormone therapy, and reversible puberty blockers. Organizations or facilities providing gender-affirming care can lose state funding, state-operated health insurance can no longer cover such care, and doctors that continue to provide such care will risk losing their license by doing so.
What do you think, Darren?
It's just incredibly disappointing. We all know that trans rights are going to be a wedge issue, or they're the pioneering wedge issue, I guess. But now to be targeting children just seems
cruel.
Beyond the pale.
Yeah, it's cruel. You know, last night, Tony Lima was here and anchor at Queer News Tonight, and he is the Chief Operating Officer of Ariana Center, one of the leading trans services and rights organizations in the country. And he reported this story of Governor Hutchinson in Arkansas vetoing the bill. And the proviso in the story that we told last night is that there was a potential of an override, which only required a simple majority in Arkansas. So when Arkansas did this today, they threw their hat in the ring to compete with Tennessee as being among the worst states in America in terms of LGBTQ rights. And I think by them doing this, and this horrible bill that they've done against children, they probably are now winning the race as the worst.
It breaks my heart. Why the children? Why go after them? Because they have no voice and they can't fight. But you're going after the kids. You're also affecting their parents. You're also affecting all of us as a whole. So all those parents that have trans children, come on over to South Florida. We welcome you with open arms right here. So that is our queer news headlines for today. So let's catch up on the LGBTQ news surrounding COVID-19 with our special segment called Quarantine Quickies. Queer News Tonight has been LGBTQ America's most important news source on the pandemic, as we have reported on coronavirus on every news broadcast since January 6th, 2020.
Tonight we report the devastating effect coronavirus has had on the American and worldwide LGBTQ community in total cases and deaths. We also provide hope of a new light at the end of this long tunnel. As of tonight, more than 2,209,000 LGBTQ Americans have contracted COVID-19, and more than 39,900 LGBTQ Americans have died from coronavirus. As of today, more than 168,500,000 individual vaccine doses have been administered in the U.S.
That is the COVID-19 news to consider for tonight. Next, we report that Happening Out Television Network is passionate about our support for the LGBTQ community. An example is Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale.
We're actually broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral in supporting that partnership. The network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ religious broadcast in the world, with more than 30,000 watching every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and it's totally live.
We encourage you to tune in. Our campaign of sponsorship proudly supports Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church. Watch this.
Hi, I'm Victor Diaz-Herman, Chief Executive Officer of Pridelines, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
Well, we'd also like to thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living, here in Fort Lauderdale, for making this set and this amazing queer church campus possible.
Finally, we thank Queer News Tonight's hotel sponsor, Best Western I-95 Fort Lauderdale.
This is the closest and best choice to the famous Wilton Drive, and our hosts and guests stay at this LGBTQ ally partner. We encourage you to stay here when visiting South Florida.
Well, finally, this evening, Queer News Tonight is proud to support our local and national nonprofit charities and organizations. And tonight we are pleased to feature Cathy Renna, Communications Director for the National LGBTQ Taskforce.
She's a powerhouse. I already told you that, right? Yeah. She is a veteran in the communications industry, went on to found Renna Communications, and currently serves as the principal of her co-founded Target Q. Since her time at GLAAD in the 1990s, she has executed her particular expertise in crisis and strategic communications, playing a central role in shaping nearly all major issues affecting the LGBTQ community.
From the beating death of Matthew Shepard in 1998 to the fight for marriage equality and the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, she has fought for us. She most recently worked with the team that coordinated historic coverage for World Pride, Stonewall 50, working with New York City Pride. In her near 30 years of media relations and activism experience, she has garnered placements in every major media outlet in the United States and internationally, and continues to be a sought-after spokesperson for LGBTQ+ issues.
Well, to tell us more about the National LGBTQ Task Force and their upcoming projects and events is the National Communications Director, Cathy Renna. Welcome, Cathy, to Queer News Tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Cathy, we, of course, we're huge cheerleaders and supporters of the National LGBTQ Task Force. Biden got elected. Everything is rainbows and unicorns. There's nothing left for us to do. So your job must have really gotten super boring since January 20th.
We just have our feet up here in Jersey. Go Jersey.
Jersey in the house.
We've actually got a lot of work to do. And the reality is now we have the opportunity to get some of it done, because we do have a new administration, and incredibly LGBTQ supportive one at that.
But before, Cathy, before we get into those individual projects that you're working on, let's take a moment just to to look around in the past 75 or so days of what we've seen since January 20th. Historic breaths of fresh air. It's like being at 12,000 feet. The air is so clear in LGBTQ America. From your seat with your fights at GLAAD and at the National LGBTQ Taskforce and all of the fights that you've been involved in, what's the last 70-some days been for you in terms of what it's felt for you in terms of the history that we've watched?
It's been a really huge shift, both emotionally and politically. It's just the relief after the election was the beginning of it, but I think it really sank in once the Biden administration took office and we started to see things that were, some of them very immediate, like, getting rid of all those horrific executive orders that the prior administration had done and, lifting the ban on trans service members. And, even just the very small ways in which queer people are being brought to the table. And not just brought to the table in a tokenized way. There are so many LGBTQ people who are part of the administration, helping shape policy, working in communications. We had the opportunity to see history made when Dr. Levine went through her Senate confirmation and became the highest ranked transgender public official ever in a presidential administration as the deputy of Health and Human Services. It's been really amazing to watch. And of course, it's juxtaposed by this incredible backlash that we're seeing from the anti-LGBT sort of extreme right sides, where there are fights at the state level, there's fight at the federal level, and as you were talking about before, targeting our trans kids, which has been a huge part of our work since day one.
Help the LGBTQ community understand what we're watching. We know what we're watching. We're seeing it in state houses. Approximately 20 states are pursuing different kinds of very discriminatory and hateful legislation. But we also see the polls that the vast majority of Americans support the Equality Act. They support LGBTQ civil rights. They support even the trans community. So what is it we're watching? Why is this happening from your seat?
That's a really hard question to answer. I mean, my sense in doing this work for decades is that, in the past year, we've been so traumatized by COVID and after 4 years of the prior administration under Trump, that it's really been hard to get folks as mobilized and activated because we're struggling to just survive. I mean, our community has been disproportionately affected by COVID in so many ways. And, our community is very, very much tied in with the work that is happening and the activism that is happening around racial justice and equality. And we're also, we have seen our democracy literally under attack. And so I think that the great paradox here is, yes, we have a tremendous amount of public support. And once again, the politicians are the last ones to come along. In this case, what we've got is a highly entrenched, information challenged. Is that a nice way to put it? Entire Republican Party that is refusing to really help us move forward at all as a country. I mean, these things are all tied together. It really is about our democracy. It is about all the diverse parts of our community that are impacted. And I think that, the challenge is we've made so much progress. A lot of folks don't even realize why we need the Equality Act. They think we have job protections when, in fact, in over 24 states in the country, people do not have job protections in public accommodations, housing, etc. Very basic rights that are still not accessible to millions.
And that is super important, Cathy. I want to focus in on now. The House has passed the Equality Act. It is sitting at the Senate. We know that it is problematic in terms of passage in the Senate. What can the LGBTQ community do to help propel the national LGBTQ, the National Task Force efforts in the Equality Act? What can we do to help support your efforts?
Well, there's a lot that folks can do. I mean, we're part of a coalition of queer and allied organizations that are doing everything we can to get the 10 votes that we need to get this thing passed. The most important thing you can do is pick up the phone and call your senator, whether they are supportive of the Equality Act or not. Because, as you said before, while we have a tremendous amount of public support, the reality is that the other side is extremely motivated and extremely well mobilized, and we're outnumbered in terms of the activation of folks. And so, for example, on April 21st, we're having a virtual lobby day, where we're going to have folks who are not just going to be phone banking and trying to reach their state senators to let them know that they know that the Equality Act is an incredibly important piece of legislation to not just queer people, but people of color, women, and so many people of diverse religions. It's a very expansive piece of legislation, actually. And we're going to do this virtual lobby day where people will be talking face to face as much as possible with staff and their elected officials.
Cathy?
You can go to the taskforce.org for information. Actually, the Task Force Action Fund, excuse me. And so that piece is something that people can get involved with, very, very easily. Whether it's at the local or at the national level. And the other is getting the people around you involved, getting your friends, your family. Again, like I said, so many people do not realize we don't have these rights in so many places. Florida being one of them. So, Florida is a target state for us to really help provide support and do a lot of activism and work and mobilizing, because it's just, you can get in a car and drive from New Jersey and you drive 4 hours and all of a sudden I don't have the same rights I had when I was home. Exactly, and that's just, right. It's unacceptable.
Cathy, you'll be happy to know that I'm getting Senator Marco Rubio on the phone as we speak to help get
Put
him
support. Put him through.
Right, I'm going to transfer his office to yeah, exactly. Listen, before we go, a lot in the LGBTQ community and our allies also don't necessarily pay attention to the effect the pandemic has had on our activism organizations, our not-for-profit organizations like the National Task Force. It requires money to be in front of the people that need to be in front of. How do we reach out and support the National Task Force financially in the mission of keeping you in the fight? How do we go about doing that?
Well, that's a very easy one. Simply go to thetaskforce.org. We are the kind of organization, and as you talked about my prior work and my prior positions, this is really probably the only organization that I would have found a home like this at. We do the kind of work that for me is so inclusive, so intersectional, so much about all of the parts of our community that, there's a home for everyone here, and there's work to do, and there's a point of entry to do that work at the task force that, is not something you can find in many other places. And so, whether you want to, join us and make a small donation, or whether you want to make a large donation, become a major donor, whether you want to get engaged and do work in your community, we're here for you. And I hope that people will do that. We'll get involved in the task force, which, as you know, does a tremendous amount of work in Southern Florida, but also nationally. Yes,
and let me echo Cathy's sentiment. If you're sitting on the sidelines and you're not helping to support the fight that Cathy, Renna, and the National LGBTQ Task Force is involved in, you're sitting on the sidelines. And now is a critical time. We're watching amazing things that are happening with the Biden-Harris administration. We need to now push it over the finish line. And the National Equality Act is the best, surest way to do that. Cathy, what a pleasure talking to you tonight, and all the luck in the coming days. The National Task Force efforts and work is so important for our community, and we thank you for your years of service and what you're doing at the Task Force now.
Thank you for yours as well. Thanks so much.
All right.
Thank you, Cathy.
Thanks, Cathy,
Thank
for
you,
participating.
Cathy, for doing everything that you do. And next time you come down here, I'm going to take you to all the girl parties, all right? Just look me up.
That
all right.
Sounds great. Sounds good to me.
So that is today's news for the LGBTQ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ evening news show. Is our community important to you?
Then help us by liking and subscribing, ring the bell for updates, and share this news. We are the only LGBTQ television live video news in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of anchors Faye Wed and Darren Lowley, we will see you daily, and by the way, that means tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Good night.